Hey, wake up! It's Means Morning News. Just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast, I'm Sam Sachs, but all my friends call me the newsman. Because I make them. You know what? I feel like starting off with some good news. It's Friday. This was something we missed from last month. 800 workers at a Walmart warehouse near Toronto voted to unionize, making it the first in Canada or in the US to do so. They will be joining Canada's largest private sector union, Unifor. This is a big deal. Labor finally has a beachhead at Walmart North America. Walmart is the largest private employer in the dang world. In Canada, it has 100,000 workers. In the US, 1.6 million workers. So the 800 who just unionized in Toronto is a start. Demands for higher wages and safer conditions motivated the union push. And according to labor notes, the union deployed a unique strategy to protect organizers. Quote, Unifor sent protection letters to Walmart informing the company that a worker committee was active at the warehouse, naming many of its members and stating that the union wouldn't hesitate to file unfair labor practice charges if Walmart violated their rights. The stakes for businesses are higher in Canada, where a union can be automatically certified if it's found that an employer engaged in abuses during the organizing campaign. In the US, under General Counsel Jennifer Abruzzo, the National Labor Relations Board recently adopted the same regulation in what's known as the CMEX doctrine, named after a company that was ordered to bargain with its workers after the board found dozens of labor abuses during the election. Basically, if a majority of workers show an intent to join a union before the election, and the employer breaks labor law during that election, then the NLRB can certify the union and issue a bargaining order. But without the CMEX decision being enshrined into law by Congress, it's subject to reversal by either the courts or by a new NLRB should a Republican win the White House. And in fact, oral arguments were heard just this week in the Ninth Circuit Federal Appeals Court in San Francisco in a case brought against the NLRB by CMEX with the backing of business interests like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce seeking to overturn the doctrine. The three-judge panel hearing the case consists of two Biden appointees and one George W. Bush appointee. And according to Bloomberg, the judges appeared split on ideological lines during oral arguments over upholding the CMEX doctrine. Of course, getting rid of CMEX would be exactly why we can't have nice things in this country, like unionized Walmarts. Relatively nice things, I should say. Far-right partisans are abusing public disclosure laws to harass government workers and prepare for a purge should Trump win. Staffers at the Reactionary Heritage Foundation are sending out thousands of Freedom of Information Act requests to government agencies with the aim of not disclosing wrongdoing or information that's in the public interest, but instead to dig up dirt on bureaucrats' personal lives. ProPublica reported on the effort earlier this month. The FOIA requests specify individual government workers by name and ask for their emails with references to, quote, transgender, pronoun, DEI, and climate equity. The point is clearly to gather information on the personal political beliefs of civil servants and details that can be spun into a scandal by conservative media. And it all dovetails with another project of the Heritage Foundation's, Project 2025, which calls for a purge of tens of thousands of civil servants, all to be replaced by right-wing loyalists. The FOIA requests are likely an intelligence gathering operation to know who to fire later. Because of that, one group that advocates for civil servants is calling on the government to not comply with the FOIA requests. Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility, or PEER, called on agencies to charge Heritage in advance for processing the FOIAs. These fees are typically waived when information in the public interest is requested by journalists, scientific outfits, and educational institutions. Peer's executive director, Tim Whitehouse, said, quote, "Taxpayers should not subsidize, even indirectly, the costs of this misguided attempt at abetting a political purge. Heritage should post a bond with each agency for the estimated costs of these searches before they even begin to process these requests." Not only that, White House called on agencies to simply ignore the requests that violate workers' privacy, including FOIAs to uncover a worker's sexual orientation. White House said, quote, "The very material Heritage wants to glean as fodder for compiling an enemies list, such as individual names, is exempt from FOIA. The director of every agency targeted by Heritage should assure their workforces that their core expectations of privacy will be vigorously upheld." Heritage is also clogging up the FOIA pipeline, making it more difficult for people who have legitimate information requests to get documents. In fact, someone who processes FOIAs for a government agency told ProPublica that it's affecting their job, with Heritage requests coming in at a rate of one every second. Very good to know that the gears of public disclosure are ground to a halt right now, so that a bunch of weirdos at the Heritage Foundation can play their game of who's gay in the government. Last night on Thursday Night Football, the Los Angeles Rams defeated the Minnesota Vikings. Way to go, Rams. Great way to turn the season around. But also, better luck next time, Vikings. Still have a strong team. Not playing favorites here. We love our viewers in Minnesota just as much as those in California, who are all still sleeping. Anyway, I bring this up because the game was played at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California, which, according to a new report, is one of several NFL stadiums likely to suffer considerable damage from climate change by 2050. The research was conducted by the risk analysis company ClimateX. It reported that NFL stadiums are projected to suffer cumulatively $11 billion in climate-related damages over the next few decades. We just saw the impact of what freak weather can have on sports stadiums when Hurricane Milton swept through Tampa and tore the roof off Tropicana Field, home to the Tampa Bay Rays. Lucky for Major League Baseball, the regular season had ended and the Rays weren't in the playoffs, or else it could have been a logistical nightmare. But it's a warning sign to teams and leagues across the U.S. This is from CNBC. Quote, "The Baltimore Orioles, Los Angeles Dodgers, New York Mets, Miami Marlins, Pittsburgh Pirates, San Diego Padres, and others play on or near the water and could see insurance premiums rise and repair costs soar as weather-related losses hit." Back to the NFL, SoFi Stadium is projected to suffer over $4.3 billion in climate change-related disasters before 2050, according to the ClimateX report. Other stadiums highlighted in the report: State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona, projected to suffer over $965 million in damages, and MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey, expected to incur over $5.6 billion in damages. That's the most of any stadium, as if things couldn't get worse for the New York Football Giants. The NFL recently lifted its ban on private equity investments in teams. I guess a lot of that new money is going to go toward literally plugging new holes in their stadiums. Before we get to this week's Rich Dick, let's check in on the ultimate Rich Dick, Elon Musk. On the show this week, I mentioned how he's bribing Trump voters to register by promising them a chance to win $1 million each day until the election. Election law experts and myself, who is not a lawyer, said that this was probably illegal. And sure enough, the Department of Justice sent Elon Musk a letter saying that what he's doing likely breaks election law. No word yet if the DOJ also sent letters to the 4 people who've received Musk's bribes so far. Somehow, Musk manages to be a dick even when he's just giving away free money. He's an all-timer. Another guy in the running this week, Yale venture capitalist J.D. Vance, who's also running to be vice president, crossed a picket line this week, publishing an op-ed complaining about Kamala Harris in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, where journalists have been on strike for 2 years, the longest-running strike in the U.S. It's bad enough to cross a picket line, but to do so just to write some crummy op-ed, that's unforgivable. J.D. Vance, you're a scab piece of shit. And you probably would have won the dishonors had I not come across this other dude who's up to some real heinous activities. And for more on that, this week's Rich Dick is Mordecai Kahana. Kahana is the CEO of a logistics firm called Global Delivery Company, and he's pitching his services to get aid into Gaza, where he hopes to get rich off the further immiseration of the Palestinian people. According to ENET News, the Israeli government is considering GDC's proposal, which entails walling off parts of Gaza and establishing high-tech checkpoints that only cleared people can enter and leave through. This is how the outlet described it. Quote, GDC's plan is to establish humanitarian bubbles in Gaza. The IDF will be tasked with cleaning every such bubble from terrorists and erecting a separation wall within 48 hours. Entry to these compounds will be prohibited, except for residents who live in the neighborhood, who will receive authorization through biometric identification. That sounds a lot like a concentration camp. Kahana has also been in contact with the U.S. government about taking over aid delivery in Gaza and gave a price for his services, telling ENET News, quote, "We told the Americans, you spent $350 million building a port that sank at sea after 8 weeks. We gave the Americans a discount, $200 million for 6 months, and it won't drown." In a post on Twitter following the Israeli military targeting and killing World Central Kitchen workers back in April in Gaza, Kahana summed up his idea like this, quote, "Gaza, only gated community with biometric. No one comes in. Nobody goes out without checked. Civilians will get help and humanitarian supplies. Terrorists will get a bullet." Yeah, sounds like a real humanitarian there. Dropsite did a deeper dive into Kahana's plans. It reported that Kahana routinely pitches his company as a, quote, Uber for war zones, and that he's already worked in areas torn by U.S. war-making, including Iraq and Afghanistan. He told the outlet that his walled biometric surveillance state would be, quote, similar to Miami without a golf course and swimming pool. It won't be a ghetto. My shirt that says I'm not planning to turn Gaza into a ghetto sure has people asking a lot of questions. Part of what's so sinister about Kahana's approach, besides somehow making life even worse for Palestinians than it was pre-October 7th, is that it pushes a lie about why humanitarian aid has failed to reach Gazans. Kahana claims it's necessary to create these militarized checkpoints and bubbles in order to prevent Hamas from stealing the aid, a claim often repeated by Israeli officials. The company said in a statement this week, quote, "The goal is to enable humanitarian organizations to deliver large amounts of humanitarian assistance to needy Gazans without the threat of having Hamas or others divert or steal the assistance and sell it for profit on the black market." Thing is, though, there's no evidence that this is a widespread problem or the reason why Gazans are starving. Even U.S. government officials have admitted that. Hamas isn't stealing the aid. Israel is just not letting it into Gaza and really never has at a sufficient level for the entirety of this war because it's conducting a fucking siege. As military leaders have repeatedly said out in the public again and again. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant a year ago, quote, "I have ordered a complete siege on the Gaza Strip. There will be no electricity, no food, no fuel. Everything is closed." So there is no need for Kahana's services in Gaza if Israel simply complied with international law and let in the dang aid. But since that's not happening, then this dipshit is probably going to get a couple $100 million to basically upgrade the security in Gaza's open-air prison, under the guise of delivering aid, of course. Kahana, by the way, is a huge supporter of Kamala Harris's presidential campaign. Take what you want from that information. Dropsite News also reported that a former employee of Kahana's is Stuart Seldowitz, who, for those who don't remember, is that guy in New York City last year who went on a racist rant berating a food truck operator. Kahana told Dropsite that Seldowitz is still a friend. Also a friend of Kahana's is Eric Prince, the mercenary kingpin whose private security firm Blackwater was infamous for a massacre in Iraq. A successor to Blackwater, a defense contractor called Constellas, is a co-partner in Kahana's plan for Gaza, providing the armed security services for the trucks and checkpoints. So Kahana, Seldowitz, Prince, all buds. If only we could get them all in one location together, acquire the coordinates, and launch a massive... What? Wait. Being told by the show's lawyers that I should not finish that sentence. What I meant to say is, if we could get them all together in one spot, then we could really give them all a piece of our mind. That's it. That's all I meant. Until then, Mordecai Kahana is flying solo as this week's Rich Dick. All right, friends, the show ends with a sunrise from Texas. It was sent in by Charles in Houston. Enjoy. Thank you, Charles. Show's over. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the team behind the scenes. Please sign up for Means TV, subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels, and follow us on social media. One day, capitalism will fall. Until then, we're going to be right here. See you next week.